Hello and welcome to More Tea Minister. My name is Ian. Today we are concluding our little mini-series on teas produced from the Wuyi cultivar with EcoChar Tea Club's Wuyi Tie Guan Yin, and that is, just taking my notes, batch 119 of the EcoChar Tea Club, Wuyi Tie Guan Yin. Now, I would heartily recommend going to EcoChar's YouTube channel and to their website to get plenty more information about this tea. But suffice it to say that this has been produced from Wuyi cultivar tea material, but it's been processed on a truly artisan scale as a Tie Guan Yin. And now by that, I don't simply mean the sort of way in which you can separate Tie Guan Yin as a way of doing things from saying it's been made from the original cultivar, but in this case, on top of Tie Guan characteristics, the artisan who produces this tea also produces Tie Guan Yin for EcoChar, and there are some very distinctive sort of steps within the process that give their Tie Guan Yin and this tea produced in the same way a very distinctive tangy profile as well. So very much looking forward to this. We're going to first of all take a look at the packaging, the tea inside, and then we will have our usual double review, Western teapot style, and also through a gong fu session. So see you soon. Here we are looking at the external packaging for EcoChar Tea Club Wuyi Tie Guan Yin Oolong. There's not a lot to say. This is a 75-gram package. It's vacuum sealed and the atmosphere has been withdrawn from the packaging. This kind of tea can take that kind of punishment, so to speak. There isn't a great deal to say about the packaging. I bought this out with a subscription to the tea club. And so if you buy the tea separately from that, you don't get any external packaging and you don't get the information card. That said, there's still plenty of information that can be gleaned from EcoChar's own Here we are looking at the packaging for the Wuyi Tie Guan Yin Oolong from EcoChar Tea Club. This is a 75-gram package. It's obviously vacuum sealed, but it's also atmosphere free because these particular tea leaves can tolerate that kind of being compacted against each other and being transported in this way. It's a small blue label which contains the information that I've already recited. Because I bought this particular tea out with a subscription to the EcoChar Tea Club, you don't get the corresponding information leaflet and you don't get the external packaging. What you get is the tea just as is. But that said, there's always plenty of information between the website and EcoChar's YouTube channel. So let's take a look at the tea inside. Here we are looking at the Wuyi Tie Guan Yin Oolong from EcoChar Tea Club. I'm going to begin with the smell of the leaves because it's really, really intriguing. There is a roasted note, but there's a really powerful smell of esters, the sort of fruit esters that we often pick up with a roast, often along with a sort of licorice and aniseed. I'm not picking up that, but there's a strong, almost savoury note of those esters, and that's really, really interesting. Now, the tea itself looks really unusual. There's some very prominent separate stalk material. The tea beads, if we can even call them that, are coming in all kinds of different sizes. The colour scheme is very, very, very dark green, if not outright dark brown. There are some tea beads that are tiny, some of them are massive. They don't even look like they've been completely bald. But of course, the reason for that is that this is an artisan production. It doesn't involve the sort of machine compression and rolling that is very common. So you're going to get something that looks a lot more natural, something that looks a lot more higgledy-piggledy, if you want to use that word. Now, the one thing I will say is I don't know whether that ester smell is to do with this extra almost fermentation step that this tea undergoes, along with its Tie Guan Yin counterpart from the same artisan. But I'd be very curious to know where this ester, this strong sort of ester smell is leading us. So, very much looking forward to trying this tea. Let's carry on. Hello and welcome to the next part of our video, which is our Western / Teapot style tasting of our Wuyi Tie Guan Yin. It's from Eco Cha, it's from their tea club. The tea, 3.5 grams of tea, was brewed with 150 mils of water at 100 degrees centigrade for 3.5 minutes. The same leaves were then subjected to water, same volume, same temperature, same duration. Yes, okay. Just to make sure I hadn't missed anything out. Let's begin by taking a look at the colour. The first steep on my left is yellowy orange, I think that's fair to say. It's not really brass or any particular kind of metalwork. I usually like that colour. The one on the left is a pale brass. It's a yellow with a slight orange tinge. This one is much, hopefully, obviously, much darker. The smell of the first steep. The volatiles are there, although they've resolved more into what I've come to expect from a roasted tea. There's that aniseed and licorice aspect to it. And something creamy, I would say, maybe creamy. And the second steep, the same, but a little milder, so a kind of very natural sweetness has come through. Plus, something that might be a bit different there. I keep wondering what to expect with this slight extra fermentation or slight fermentation is it might be something akin to a dark tea. Sweet and roasted on the cup. Oh, wow. That's really interesting. There's a definite tang, but not in an acrid sense. It just lifts it. It makes it come across like something radically different. At the same time, there is something that's making me think it's like a boiled hard candy. I don't know what that is, whether that's the tang and the sweetness working together, but that's the kind of sense it's giving. Now, funnily enough, the second steep, despite being paler, all those different things have come into sharper contrast. They're much more sort of very distinct. The tang isn't quite as strong, but it's there. The sweetness is there. And there's that same brain is saying this should be hard candy. At the same time, there's also something woody. There isn't anything kind of smoky. Let's try a bit. It's really, really drinkable. That's the thing that is the most obvious thing about it, is that it's just quaffable. No sort of knees or elbows or problems with this. And it's really smooth. Yeah, it's not astringent, but there's a definite sort of mouth-watering tang. Yeah, and woody elements. I've had, in its own way, Tianjian, which is a little like this. But because those have often had got a few years on them, any knees and elbows have been removed altogether. This has got, that tang is there. And it's lively. I'd be very curious to try this at the sort of parameters that Eco Char usually recommends, which is something like 1 in 17. So for this brew, it was, thinking back to their video, 11.25 grams of tea in a 200-meter teapot. Now, whether that means you top it up to 200 or you add 200, I can't do the math. I'm not that good at the maths. But 10, 17s, well, maybe. Anyway, point is, I suspect the tang and that underlying candy, savoury candy, would really come to the fore. So I might throw up a community post as to what I think about that, or I might do that as a very, very, very short standalone video. Anyway, let's move on to our gong fu and see what this tea is like in that style. Back in a mo. Welcome to the final part of our video, which is our gong fu session to review our Eco Char Tea Club tea, the Wuyi Tie Guan Yin. The brewing parameters are the water's at 100 degrees centigrade, 3 grams of tea, 50 mils per steeping in the smaller Tie Guan. I'm just going to make sure everything is absolutely red hot. This tea has proved to be really interesting. There is a really complicated sort of tang to this tea that is, part of it is the tea itself, it's the cultivar, but some of it is this processing method. And it's making for something that's really, really interesting, really, really complex. And I am very much looking forward to seeing how that comes across in a gong fu session. So, with that in mind, notepad, stopwatch, and let's proceed. Everything, at least I know everything's lovely and toasty now. That's the tea. Let's go with 50 mils and we'll check in at 35-40. I think that was behaving a little like a strip tea rather than a rolled tea or balled tea. In other words, the leaves are floating on top of the water. So hence me keeping that sugarling. Okay, we're coming up for 30 seconds. There's a nice smell coming off this already, even with the lid on. So we'll check in at 40 and see if there's anything happening. Some roast, but it's very thin. We'll just let that play out for a bit longer. I think we will just take it to, that's 48. I really want to keep this controlled. And then we may just move up in 5-6 second interviews. It's really complicated. Part of me is thinking it comes across like the aniseed and licorice aspect of a high roast, but that's part of something else. There's again that black fruit component, there's esters, and that's just the lid. The color is, oh, I tip it that way, it's darker than I thought. I would say that is yellow. What kind of yellow? Yellowy orange. And there's fruit, and there's esters, and there's roast on there. And some cream on top of that on the cup. And a tang on top of all of that. But not a tang, once again, it's not a tang that puckers the mouth. It just makes the mouth water. It's really just incredibly complex. So, dropping off naturally, light to medium body, but we're getting there. Let's go with 53. Yep. I didn't point out, but those tea beads are pretty well on the way to unfurling already. They weren't exactly reluctant with the Western / teapot style, but they were nowhere near as... They didn't have the alacrity that we're seeing there. So we'll take that up to about 53, maybe 55. Next steep will need more water. If anybody happens to watch this part of this one video, I'd like to apologise for the sheer number of videos I'm releasing. I promise it's not because I think these are suddenly fascinating beyond words, or ever have been. I'm just trying to catch up with the remaining stocks of unreviewed tea. Not all the tea I have is going to get reviewed. There's a sort of caramelized edge there. Interesting. Colour-wise, a little darker. We're heading towards brass, I would say. Some slight florals are creeping in there. Definitely a dark fruit. And roasty and slightly smoky. And again, that tang. Body's up to medium. Fruit and candy without it being overly sweet. Really complex, mouth's watering again. There's so much happening here. The fruit esters are there, there's cream. There's so much just going on the cup, it's hard to explain. So a little bit of smoke, a little bit of roast, some sweetness, lots of body, some creaminess, slightly drying now, only slightly. Almost a sort of, the aftertaste, the tang on the aftertaste reminds me a bit of alcohol, not that I've drank anything in years. The leaves have, funnily enough, it's going to sound an odd thing to say, but the leaves have become a very obvious dark green. Wow, they smell like jam. They don't have a roasted quality as such, the caramelized note, and they don't have that coconutty smell of green leaf. Maybe it's an Wuyi thing, but yeah, definitely like jam. Wow. Okay. Let's, given how unfurled those are, they're still a little bit leathery, but you can maybe see they've definitely filled the bottom of that, and they'll take a lot more than 50 mils. Let's keep that low. Let's take that to... It might need 60, 63, maybe 10 seconds extra, just for the amount of water it's going to take, which is probably... That's very nearly 100. Let's say 90 for the sake of argument. That's gone really quickly, just because I've really enjoyed this tea and I've just been hosing it back. None of it's gone into the wastewater. I really don't mind whether I get too much caffeine from this. Hopefully you can see what's going on here. Again, I've been caught out. Amazingly, the sunshine is out. just right at above my house, it would seem. Don't know if that's a good sign. Normally, where are we? Oh, blimey. Sorry about that. That's probably about 40. I really don't want to have it for too long. The rest of the sky is grey, and there's a sunbeam just right above my house. I'm hoping that doesn't mean something hugely savoury just there. That's about a minute. Extra water, and that was only a few seconds extra, but the leaves are already really unfurled. Yeah, savoury and vegetal. And sweet. Ooh, yeah, the cup has got a smoky element, almost sort of fermented. Yeah, the leaves are now still not quite tender. They still smell like jam, and they are fully hydrated. That was really quick. That was, yeah, really, really fast. The leaves are still a little flat, but look at the size of those. If I unfurl that, that's a that's a beast of a leaf, that one. Wow, okay. Yes, very jammy. Okay. Might still be a little hot to try and make sense out of, so let's let that cool a bit. A bit of red fruits and tannic, sort of cocoa dusting quality. It's cooling and it's becoming a lot more like syrup. Really good. It's lost some of its outright potency, but it's becoming harmonious. Truly, just everything is just one. Still medium body, that's good. Still very smooth. Still got that savoury edge. And maybe that's a quality of Wuyi all on its own, but it's just become very harmonious. There's no sort of edges. Well, try that again. Maybe go up this time. Yeah, that's 100. We'll have to take that to maybe 70. But it's just really, it's really complicated in the lower steepings, and then it just becomes harmonious. It just all sort of fits together. It lingers nicely, bit of tannic, bit of smoke. That's really, really good. I really would like to try this there. I noticed in the EcoChar video they manage about 6 steeps with their particular way of doing it. And now that's almost like a cross between Western and Gong Fu, but it's more steep than I suspect I'll get from this before we exhaust it. At least, maybe not exhaust it, maybe that's the wrong word, but whilst it's still distinct. Right, let's go 115. Sweet, vegetal, little creamy. I haven't really been looking at the colour. Did I even look at the colour of the last one? That's lemon yellow. My goodness, I am slipping. That one I would say is definitely lemon yellow. And it's a gentle, fruity smell. But again, there's a savoury edge to it once it starts to cool slightly. This is, as I say, this is just to let it cool. Yeah, the leaves are now tender. You can see how much of the tub they're filling. They're losing some of that jammy edge, but only some. Fruity. Some of the jam on the leaves is there and the sort of sweetness. Maybe a sort of tannic edge. A lot more going on in the cup. A lot more of that jam. Yeah, it's a lot sweeter. Don't know what we've done to bring out so much sweetness. It's dropping off, but it's very sweet. Body is light to medium, closer to somewhere between light and medium. It's very smooth though. And it's very, very quaffable still, but there's nothing about it that's shouting how different I am. I still kept some of the roasted edge. That's really, really good. So let's sum up our take on this tea. Both the Western and the Gong Fu have been very satisfying. The Gong Fu seems to have, I don't know what we've done. Maybe we've extracted the goodness out of the leaves a lot more quickly, but although it's only slightly drying still and it's smooth and there's still light to medium body, at this point it's becoming anonymous. The Western, I suppose, because you're not chopping and changing, it kept that really characteristic, really complicated flavour profile throughout, but that's a practical thing. I would still like to try it done in the eco char way, really, really high ratio, but much shorter steepings, about a minute and a half each, something like that, just to see what that brings. But that really, really good showing that. Flavour's still lingering. It's fruity, it's savoury, it's tangy, it's sweet, it's black fruit, and it's red fruit, and it's slightly cocoa-y. Fantastic stuff. Okay. Now this is Tea Club tea, so it's not standard release. And I don't know whether you could get the tea from this artisan somewhere else. I don't even know if it's still available on the EcoChar website, but I would urge you to give it a try if you can find it, because it's really, really interesting, very, very tasty, and maybe even more rewarding if I tweak it the way EcoChar do. Anyway, very interesting, really, really enjoyable and satisfying, and it remains only for me to say happy steeping, and God bless.